In this video, we will show you how to replace your power steering pressure hose on this Lincoln Navigator. This will be located between your power steering pump and your power steering box. Let's get into it. Alright friends, let's get started on our job. Pop the hood and make your way over to the power steering reservoir. We'll open this cap. Give the seal on the cap a quick inspection to make sure it is still soft and pliable and it's not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. Once you've done that, you can set it aside. Now when you go to add to this in the end, you're going to be using Mercon ATF. That's transmission fluid. Let's remove as much fluid from this as possible. I've got my fluid vacuum. Now let's start getting our air inlet out of the way. For that, we'll grab onto these two lines, pull them out of position and bring them down. Make your way to your air temperature sensor. Give that a little squeeze, pop it off of there. A quick check for corrosion and set that aside. Continue on to removing your line coming across the back side here. Just pull that right out of the boot. Set that aside. Let's make our way over here with an 8mm or flathead screwdriver. Loosen this clamp. We'll come down to this area, loosen this clamp as well. Now we can remove this from the area so we have plenty of room. Now that we have that out of the way, we have a nice clear view of our serpentine belt. Before you start removing the belt from the area, it's important to take note of all of the pulleys and the direction that the belt goes over them. You'll find that it goes over some and under others. Now let's continue on with a 1/2-inch drive ratchet down to the serpentine belt tensioner. That's down along the passenger side of the engine. We'll push on this clockwise and remove it from the pulley. Now let's come along the driver's side of the engine and remove the belt from the power steering pulley. At this point, we can leave the belt in the vehicle, but let's just have a quick look at it. You want to make sure that it doesn't look like it's cracked or worn or damaged in any way. Now we can set this aside and make our way underneath the front of the vehicle. The next thing you'll want to do is make your way underneath the front of the vehicle. We're going to remove the skid shield that comes across the front of the frame. For this, you're going to find several 13mm headed bolts holding it in place. Remove all 6. Make sure you're holding that shield for the last one so it doesn't fall and hurt you. Remove the shield. Now that we have the shield out of the way, you have a nice clear view of your power steering pressure line. You'll find that it makes its way all the way up behind the power steering pump pulley. We're going to have to use a power steering pump pulley removal tool. We'll put this in place and start pulling that pulley off of the pump. Let's start putting on our tool. The way that we're going to have to remove this is by pulling on the pulley itself and pressing up against the shaft of the power steering pump. Slide part of my tool on there. Now we'll use the driver, come right in through the center. Double check to make sure it's completely centered. This looks good. On our removal tool, we'll be using a 1-inch wrench and a 13mm wrench. There we go. Let's get our tools out of here and remove the pulley. Go ahead and give that a quick inspection and set it aside. Now that we have that out of the way, let's pay attention to the power steering pump, the shaft, and the seal that goes between the two. You just want to make sure it doesn't look like it's damaged or leaking in any way in this area. We'll wipe it down. As you can tell, the seal looks like it's still in good condition. Continue on by cleaning the shaft of the power steering pump. For this, we'll just use some fine sandpaper just to remove any rust or debris from the area. Now we can move along to removing the power steering pressure line from the bottom of the pump. For this, we'll use an 18mm wrench, slide it on there, and turn this counterclockwise to remove it. Keep in mind there might still be power steering fluid in this area. Have a collection bucket under here so you can recycle that fluid properly. Now that we've removed that, continue on over towards the steering box. You'll find that you have a plastic protective cover going over the steering shaft. This is a two-piece cover. It separates. We don't want to deal with the side that's closest to the power steering box, but you actually want to take off the secondary piece. It should just come unclipped fairly easily, and you can slide that up the shaft and out of the way. Now that we have that out of the way, we're going to feel right up on top of the power steering box. You'll find that you have two lines that go into it. The line closest to the front of the box is the power steering pressure line that we're going to be removing. Let's use our 16mm wrench to start loosening the power steering pressure line from the box. Pop this up and out of place. Now we can remove the line. And there it is, friends. All right, now we can get ready to install our brand new power steering pressure line. Before we put that to the power steering box, make sure you install your brand new rubber O-ring. We'll just slide this in place over the tip of the line. Make sure it's completely seated all the way around. Now we can put this up behind here and onto the power steering box. Now we'll make our way up here. Make sure you start this in by hand so you're sure you're not cross-threading it into the box, which could potentially cause damage to either the line or the steering box itself. Once you have it started in, continue on snugging it up with a 15mm wrench. Okay, so right there it's bottomed out. We'll just make sure we make it nice and snug. Grab that line, give it a wiggle, make sure it cannot pivot in the box. If it can pivot, it is not tight. Now we can start installing the other side of the line. We'll put that directly up against the pump. Use a small 18mm wrench to start turning this in. You want to make sure that you do not feel any pressure at first, so you're sure you're not cross-threading it into the power steering pump. Right there's where it bottomed out. Now I'll grab a larger wrench so I can make sure it's nice and snug. There we are. All right, let's get ready to install our power steering pulley onto the pump. To do that, you want to make sure you have a power steering pulley installer. That should have a bearing installed on the installer itself. You're going to want to make sure you use an 8x1 adapter for this. So what we'll be doing is putting the power steering pulley up to the shaft itself. Get that up on here. We'll take our tool and start screwing it into the center of the power steering shaft. For our tool, we'll be using a 13mm wrench to hold the center shaft and a 1-inch wrench to turn the nut. You can also try to use a small pry bar to hold the pulley from spinning on you. All right, so right there it feels as though the tool stopped. We'll remove the adapter and the tool and double check to make sure that the pulley is sitting flush with the shaft of the power steering pump. Now, as I'm removing my adapter, I can see that the pulley itself and the shaft are lined up perfectly. You don't want to have any of the pulley hanging off of the shaft, in which case you're going to have an issue with the serpentine belt. Now, with that out of the way, you can see that I'm sitting perfectly flush. Now let's reach up in here and we'll put back on our protective plastic piece. As we start aligning this, let's feel up along the top. We're going to make sure that we put it over the power steering line. Should slide right into position and lock in. Now we can start putting our shield back on here. Start in all 6 of your 13mm mounting bolts and then snug them up. Let's make our way back up top and start reinstalling our serpentine belt. For this, I'll just go ahead and swing it all the way down underneath that power steering pulley that we just installed on the power steering pump. Slide it right down around there. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that all the ribs of the belt sit directly in the grooves on each of the pulleys. Let's take up that slack. Double check all the way around each of the lower pulleys. It's common to fall off of possibly the AC compressor down on the bottom passenger side. Once you're sure it's sitting on all the pulleys properly, we'll continue on to that serpentine belt tensioner. We'll get our ratchet on here using the 1/2-inch drive. Slide it on there. We're going to have to turn this clockwise. As I start pulling on this, we're going to put the belt up and over the alternator along the top. Now, once you feel as though you have the belt installed, you need to double check. Make sure the belt is sitting on all the grooves properly. If it's off by even 1 tooth on one pulley, you're going to destroy your serpentine belt. Assuming it looks good, go ahead and remove your serpentine belt tensioner tool. Once you're sure you have the belt on properly, we'll continue on with the air intake. Slide that onto the air filter housing. With that in place, we'll continue on to the throttle body. Press that on as far as you can, making sure that you make a good seal. After both of those are in place, continue on snugging your 8mm headed clamps. Let's get this on here. Move along to the air temp sensor. Make our way up here, resecure these lines. Let's make our way over to the power steering reservoir with a funnel and start filling that power steering system with Mercon transmission fluid. Now, once you have your fluid up to at least the maximum level, we're going to go ahead and get inside of the vehicle and turn the wheel from one side all the way to the other several times. What that will do is burp out the air from in the system and allow the fluid to make its way down in. Now we can make our way into the passenger compartment. I'm going to put the key in the on position and turn the wheel from side to side. Have a look inside this reservoir. You're going to see all the air bubbles making their way up as the fluid makes its way down. As we continue doing this, let's make sure that we continue checking the fluid level and adding as necessary. Once you feel as though you've burped out all the air from in the system with the vehicle off, go ahead and start up the vehicle. Let it run for approximately 10 seconds and turn it right back off. Make your way back out here and triple check your serpentine belt. Make sure it's sitting on all the pulleys properly. Assuming that looks good, you can make your way back into the passenger compartment, start up the vehicle, and let it run. We're going to take the wheel and continue turning it from side to side, making our way out here and double checking for air coming out of the power steering system. As soon as you're sure you don't see any air coming up and out of the power steering reservoir, just double check to make sure your fluid is up to the proper level, the maximum right here. Reinstall your power steering cap. Close the hood, take it for a road test. Aside from that, thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.